So I'm going to go really, really fast, and I think you've already heard a lot about the future of health and medicine today because you guys have been building it and covering everything from AI to cardiology to digital health. So I'm going to try and maybe connect some of the dots you've been hearing about. I was inspired by the work the hospital systems here do, and a lot of you do, to integrate health and medicine across the spectrum and integrating many elements of the future of care. Today, doing art with DALL-E 3, which of course is a lot better than what we had a year ago with DALL-E 2. So this sort of GPT-enabled era even lets us do, but the bottom line, we're all now using these tools to sort of upskill ourselves, whether it's to make videos or art, or now as clinicians, it's already doing a much better job than most of us at passing the board exams, and the last version of GPT-01 is another step forward in that regard. And it's still early days, right? We're only 2 years since ChatGPT really launched, and we're already seeing patients and clinicians and families use GPT to make diagnoses that many specialists would miss, to use it to improve their empathy, because many clinicians don't spend enough time with their patients. And bottom line, we all recognize that this is moving faster than much of us can keep up with, from the regulatory perspective, from reimbursement, from the social perspective. Change is happening faster and faster. And as we know, GPT in its still early era has challenges. It makes mistakes. It's not perfect yet. It also has the challenges that it may be the GPT being like e-mic for your brain, as Sam Altman has said, but what happens if your kids never learn how to ride a regular bike or never develop their own biking muscles to get in shape? So what happens when we start to rely on these things and it's malpractice not to use the GPT to make a differential diagnosis? I see this new era not just being of generative AI, but more of generative health, this idea that our interfaces particularly will speak to us in our language based on our age, culture, language, personality type, our health goals. And I think I reframe that as multimodal digital health. To sort of really drive an era where we'll all have our own personal health agent that really understands us, knows all our data when we share it, and can really improve healthcare and make it much more intelligent, much more connected, more precise, and more democratized and equitable and accessible around the planet. A lot of the work that's thematically here at the sort of interface of personalized, connected, and preventative. And of course, we all want to sort of shift where we sort of live today in an era of intermittent reactive sick care to the future that's much more healthcare focused, much more continuous, personalized, anytime, anywhere. So that's a bit of the theme I want to cover here, from where are we going now to where we sort of go next. And I think of a lot of what you've been covering today here. So, of course, a lot of the future is being built on accelerating technologies. AI is just one of those components. 10, 12 years ago, I gave my second TED Talk, Medicine's Future. There's an app for that. 10, 12 years ago, there's only a couple thousand health apps and maybe a dozen wearables. And now we have thousands in each category. And it's not about any one technology per se, but there's super convergence, where technologies are getting faster, cheaper, more available. That super convergence, where a lot of the amazing innovations many of you in the room are building, are changing or give us an opportunity to reinvent healthcare. Most of what you see here in the middle, from computational biology to CRISPR to virtual reality, didn't exist when I was a Stanford medical student in the 1990s. And those are the tools we can do and leverage now to reimagine healthcare today and into the next decade. And the next decade will make the last 10 years look slow. So I think you all need to be challenged to have a bit of a 10-year view as we re-architect the future of health and medicine going forward. It's also a great time. A lot of you are investors. I have my own seed stage fund called Continue Health Ventures. We're investing in a lot of early stage companies built by technologists, meeting unmet needs, not just to do sick care, but to do healthcare. So an exciting time to invest in the future of healthcare as well. And when I mention the future of health and wellness, that's the area to potentially invest in, right? We need to think about well care, or often this idea of health span. We don't want to just live to 120 and feel 120. We want 110 to be the new 50 or new 60. And I think as we're seeing now, the science is really starting to accelerate. It is going to give us potentially, especially if you stay healthy in the next 10, 20 years, to maybe stop and even reverse aging. So a whole new era of restorative medicine. And we live in Silicon Valley. A lot of people want to live forever. That's a long time. There's also a lot of snake oil out there, so be careful. But I think we're entering a new age where we'll hopefully live longer, healthier, productive lives. And recognizing that having improved health span and lifespan is not just driven by our technologies and gene therapy and CRISPR, but mostly determined by our social determinants, which are, of course, the key driver, and we need to integrate better into our lives going forward. So as we think about social determinants, paying attention to good quality food, education, water, sleep, and now the digital determinants of health. Do you have access to Wi-Fi and battery life, which is always a challenge? How do we think about the digital determinants in terms of who has internet access? Still about a third of the planet isn't connected. That's all accelerating now with satellite-based tools. So we have a whole new population that's going to be connected in this new digital age that we can leverage better care for on a connected basis. So even though we're in this sort of exciting super connected era. Sometimes it feels like we're still stuck in the back to the future. I trained at Mass General Hospital in internal medicine and pediatrics more than 20 years ago now. And when I go back to visit, which I did a couple months ago, the ward at Mass General Hospital has not changed in 20-something years. Some of the same alarms are beeping, some of the same nurses, some of the same patients, still using the cutting-edge tool of our day to communicate to the pharmacy down the street, the fax machine. I'm sure many of you are still filling out paper forms when you see your clinicians. I had my own cardiac study done last year at a Stanford clinic. How did I get my results? On a CD-ROM. I don't even own a CD-ROM player anymore. So we're still architecting healthcare on the old rails of the past and defining healthcare in old silos. And we're still, especially in the United States, not doing a very good job compared to other countries. We spend the most per capita and have some of the worst outcomes. So a long way to go going forward. A long way to go to improve true precision medicine. For the top 10 grossing drugs sold in the United States last year, they're only really effective for about 1 in 4 to 1 in 24 of the patients who take them. So a real challenge to kind of move the needle forward. And of course, we can take inspiration from many other industries that have disrupted entire fields, from how we do our banking to how we get our entertainment. We've all seen the fourth industrial age arrive. We've also seen amazing disruptions, some very bad ones, and some potentially good ones catalyzed by the COVID pandemic, which made us realize that healthcare is sort of stuck in the second or third industrial age. And so the positive side to the pandemic is that it made us do things smarter, faster. What used to take 10 years sometimes took 10 days or 10 hours, so we innovated faster. So the optimist in me likes to think that just like Sputnik set off the space age, COVID sparked a bit of a new health age that we all need to leverage into the next decade again, even if we're not hopefully challenged by a next generation monkeypox or whatever might be coming next. That was a bit of a theme of a more recent TED Talk, how COVID had been catalyzed the future of medicine. So I'm going to use those kind of 2 TED Talks as a bit of a leverage point in this talk. Where were we about 10 years ago? Where are we now? And what's coming next? And how do you have that 10-year view about what's going next going forward? So what's going to be next? Well, we'll start with what's now. What's the future of medicine? Future medicine, as I wrote in this National Geographic article, isn't really about 12 or 20 or 100 innovations, but how you connect the dots, particularly as they accelerate going forward. And it's often not just about the technology, of course, it's about the incentive models, right? We don't really practice evidence-based medicine, we practice reimbursement-based medicine. We're often paying for sick care, more procedures, more elements. We're not paying for mindfulness training or wellness or Ayurvedic care when that can actually prove very preventative. So we need to see the shift in how we pay for things along with the technologies. And the incentives are changing a bit to go from hospital to home to phone to on inside our bodies, to sort of move from hospital to hospital. So the changing incentives of where we do care can again improve outcomes and democratize elements. I've been sort of at this interface of the future of medicine for a while. I've been the chair of medicine for something called Singularity University, which started down the street at NASA Ames. I built a platform called Exponential Medicine, which is now called Next Med Health. And the theme of that program and platform, which you're all invited to this December, is not any one set. It's not about digital health or genomics or pharma or wearables or AI or psychedelics, but bringing people from all sorts of worlds together to understand what's the state of the art and how we can collaborate, particularly as technologies converge. We had the folks from Genomics England. We integrate our friend Swaminanda and have meditation and yoga and talk about, he likes to say the only medication you need is meditation. So we bring in those elements as well. We've had the head of innovation from National Health Service who shared this old quote, which I love: the difficulty lies not in the new ideas, but in escaping from the old ones. So sometimes the hard part is not the new shiny technology, but how do we integrate that and change the mindsets of many of our very antique thinking organizations and cultures of medicine. We brought the FDA in. Like, how do they think about new software as a medical device? We need to bring the regulators and the policymakers on board if we're going to accelerate health and medicine. Our next event is in December 10th. We've got folks from Eric Topol to Dean Kamen to Ed Boyden to Michelle Williams to many others coming together. So you're all invited to join us this December. Go to nextmed.health and bring your startups and your innovation to San Diego. Now, one of the things we're all realizing is sometimes, we expected to be here, but we're actually a little farther ahead than we liked. And my favorite example of this recently, you may have been playing around with notebooklm.google.com, where you can upload almost any PDF and generate a podcast. And I did that with the deck for NextMed. We'll see if this plays. But it generated this within 5 minutes. AI is easy, AV is hard. But you can generate on-demand podcasts now, which sound like they're human. It's pretty magical. Okay, so let's look at a few things about where they were, where are they now, and where they're going next. Let's start with something you've covered today in some degree, genomics, right? The price of sequencing of a whole genome has dropped at twice the rate of Moore's Law. 10, 15 years ago, we all started to do 23andMe, and we might have met our cousins. But now that we've gone from a $10,000 genome to now basically a $100 genome with Ultima Genomics and maybe $150 from others, we're going to see a $10 genome in the next decade, right? How are we going to leverage that into care? It's one thing to have your genomic information, but how do we put that into the workflow of a clinician to manage pharmacogenomics and to pick the right statin or the right blood pressure medications or the right longevity cocktail, right? How do we connect the dots between the clinic and the research, which is starting to happen at scale with Genomics England? How do we think about not just diseases at a descriptive stage, like type 2 diabetes, which we all know, but understand there's at least 3 distinctive genetic subtypes that we can identify by omics and AI combined. So we're going to start to hyper-segment many diseases and treat them in much more personalized and proactive manners. Reading DNA, we're going to start writing DNA, this idea of synthetic biology. CRISPR-based gene editing is now FDA cleared for curing some diseases like sickle cell and maybe soon thalassemia and maybe even HIV. A friend of mine, a fellow Aspen fellow, Dr. Patrick Hines, is a physician who just climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. But what was exciting is he brought a now cured sickle cell patient named Jimmy who got cured with CRISPR of his sickle cell and was able to summit Mount Kilimanjaro. Think about how incredible that is. I was able to tell that story to Jennifer Doudna a couple weeks ago. And speaking of Nobel laureates, just last week, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for leveraging AI machine learning to do protein design. So we're really entering an era of, I think, of N1 designer medications, drugs, and even vaccines, which will start to be provided to maybe even prevent cancers, neurologic diseases in many cases. So that's where sort of the synthetic biology world is going. So of course, it's not just an age of exponential genomics. We now have low-cost proteomics, the exposome, which is important. If you grew up in Mumbai or Beijing versus rural California, you have very different exposures. There's the metabolome, which you all can measure with now over-the-counter CGMs. And of course, the microbiome, the bugs on our skin and our gut and our mouth, everywhere else, play a role in our risk for everything from obesity to neurologic and cardiovascular diseases. So the important thing is not any one ohm, but how we start to put them together in a sort of, the term you've, I'm sure, covered today, the sort of digital twin era, which is using multiple omics to predict what might be optimal for prevention, diagnostics, or therapy. I see a lot of you trying to keep up with my slides and take pictures. I'll give you a QR code at the end if you want to download my deck. So sorry I'm going fast, but you need to get to dinner. And hopefully in my world of oncology, we'll actually have precision, personalized digital twins for oncology patients because it's too much data for any even tumor board to make sense of today. So of course, the world is now moving exponentially. You're all familiar with Moore's law, which is why our smartphones are more powerful than the Cray supercomputer, actually more computing power in my Apple Watch than we had on a Cray supercomputer. That's leveraged this new world of digitally enabled care. What we grew up with as analog devices have now shrunk and become appified. So what used to be physical is now digitized, dematerialized, demonetized, and democratizable, right? All these things on our desk and many elements of health and medicine are sort of dissolving in this digital space and will fit into our augmented reality glasses. You guys are talking about Ayurvedic medicine and other elements. That has digital elements that you can connect the dots on as well. And bottom line, we can start to bring these digital tools with us even on our smartphone. The smartphone has advanced pretty quickly, and now even the poorest on the planet have a smartphone. That's becoming a medical device, right? It's dissolving and bringing in our data onto our glasses or soon onto our Apple Vision Pros and our contact lenses. It's bringing us this augmented sort of virtual beings that we react to as if they're real. We know they're not real, but we interact with them as if they are. And now, of course, you can kind of design your own avatar. You can now make your own. This is an avatar of me if the sound was working. You can not really hear it, but...
On behalf of avatars everywhere, it's wonderful to be with you here for the TALHospital Health Fest.
I just typed that.
Exploring what's next in the increasingly AI and digitally enabled world of health and medicine. Now, I'm going to rest my neural circuitry and hand it back to real Daniel.
Okay, thank you, Avatar Dan. So that was just made from... Thank you very much. I just typed that, and it speaks for me. And it can do it in any language, Spanish, Russian, Hindi, etc. So these sort of avatars will become part of our digitally twinned world, right? I don't think this is the best framing for NVIDIA or Hippocratic AI to say that we'll replace nurses for $9 an hour, but they're going to enable us to let some of these smart AI-enabled avatars do the work that used to require phone calls and let nurses and others work at the top of the license, not at the bottom, right? And so we're now in this world of not just AR, VR, XR, but sort of spatial computing, right? Now the ability, you have your old Google Glass now has been advanced to the point where you can bring very complex information into almost any clinical environment, right? It can help surgeons be guided step by step, leveraging the data from thousands of surgeries before them using augmented reality and see through the patient. These start as expensive, kludgy, not perfect devices, but now you might have seen Meta's announcement. In a year or two, we'll probably have Meta glasses that blend true augmented and virtual reality at lower and lower cost. And I love the lessons from other fields in augmented reality. I've been a pilot, I've been a flight surgeon in F-15, F-16 squadrons. We use augmented reality in the cockpit, right? You don't look at your cockpit, you look through the glass, kind of the heads-up display, and it gives you guidance about where the bad guy is and where your wingman is, who's shooting at you. It can also give you a warning if you're about to hit a mountain. Tell you to pull up. So imagine we try and leverage that into the future of behavior change, right? You might see your breakfast in one way, and now with your meta glasses, you see your breakfast in another way, and it then gives you a little nudge for your behavior change. So we'll see these tools kind of help us see our worlds in new ways. And of course, we can take other lessons from aviation. When I started to learn how to fly, it was just with a round dials and a paper map. My airplane now is the same size, but it has a glass cockpit, touchscreen, situational awareness. We know about the traffic, the weather, the frequencies, all just at the touch of a screen in real time, sort of real-time evidence that we can think about leveraging into this world of not just the fighter cockpit, but for clinicians and patients to not just have big data, but sort of the true kind of just-in-time guidance and GPS that we need for our healthcare journeys. We can also use augmented reality to engage patients to understand their own physiology. My son Leo loves to wear his augmented reality t-shirt and kind of learn his own physiology when he's young to improve his engagement with his own health. We can use augmented reality to see future you when you look in the mirror. Not you of today, but if you keep having Dunkin' Donuts for breakfast, future you, right? So that's a vision of our future selves, which can be powerful. You can do that today with Snapchat. Here's me now, and here's 100 Dunkin' Donuts later. I will now only have one donut. Or if you have a family member who smokes, and you can show them the impact of smoking, before smoking, after smoking. That can be a powerful leverage of change. Or if you want to tell your kids what's going to happen if they spend too much time on social media. So these are new ways to sort of see our future selves that can be very powerful. And then, of course, there's virtual reality. I'm sure you've all been playing with VR. It's fun to put grandma on a roller coaster. But virtual reality is now a tool, right? It can be a tool for seniors to help with their cognitive abilities and to explore the worlds. It can be a tool for treating burn patients who have severe pain, putting them into a video game and augmented reality to use less pain medications. It's a tool to engage folks in physical therapy. No one likes to do their physical therapy. Now you can gamify it, make it much more engaging. It can be used for mental health. You've been talking about mental health. Ancient arts of meditation can now be integrated into virtual reality, and that's a very powerful modality for some people. You don't need technology to meditate, but for some people it's helpful. We're seeing incredible new convergences for mental health. This is a technology out of Cedars-Sinai with Apple Vision Pro. You put the headset on, and you can go meditate with a smart AI avatar that comes to you and is basically a psychologist. It remembers you. You have a conversation with it. It can give you conversational behavioral therapy. It's a really impressive platform. Just the beginning of having these sort of agents that are smart and understand us coming into our spaces going forward. And then more on mental health. There's now video games for mental health that can engage your breath. This is a company we invested in called Deep Well Therapeutics. They just launched on Oculus. And what's exciting is they just got FDA clearance for their SDK for medicinal media, to the ability to integrate mindfulness and breath work into video games writ large. So watch that space. A lot of us, kids or adults, like to play video games. And then, of course, for medical education. These are tools now. Here's a Stanford project a couple years old called Virtual Heart. I can never remember tetralogy flow. Now I can walk inside of a heart, understand its anatomy, understand an intervention. That could be useful for the cardiac surgeon or the patient or the medical student. Or to practice procedures, like a pilot will fly a flight simulator for very dangerous things. You can practice them in virtual reality and in AR as opposed to on your patients. And of course, many of us who are clinicians trained as see one, do one, teach one. The future will be see one and simulate till you get it right. So we're going to have these new ways of training, which are already much better than using old approaches. And in the operating room, right? I hate to break it to you, but 50% of surgeons are below average. Some are very below average. No one wants the below average surgeon, but now we can start to measure with AI and sensors what's the right thing to do. How do you leverage the knowledge from many surgeries around the world? How do you integrate robotics, which are becoming more autonomous? So we're going to enter an interventional age, which is sort of like we've gone from driver assist to surgeon assist. Not yet ready for autonomous surgery, but in the next 10, 20 years, particularly around the world where there's many places with no surgeons, these will be very transformative. And then, of course, key to all of healthcare is diagnostics, picking up disease early rather than late. 10 years ago, we had the first AliveCore EKG case from my friend Dave Albert on your smartphone. Now, 10 years later, you can buy the credit card version, right? With AI, it can diagnose AFib. Now they have a 12-lead version that can diagnose 36 different conditions. It's FDA cleared. The smartphone as well has other components, right? The microphone and speaker can be leveraged to look in your kid's ear and determine whether they have an ear infection and save a visit to a pediatrician. The camera now can look up and pick up heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen saturation, maybe even hemoglobin A1C. That means you can do vital signs basically anywhere for free, not needing any connected devices or a clinic. The smartphone can also be used for a laboratory. I'm on the board of this company called Healthy.io. You don't need to bring your urine to the lab. You simply dip the dipstick at home, and you can diagnose your urinary tract infection or preeclampsia, or pick up early kidney disease. And the 9 out of 10 people don't know they have early kidney disease. So easy peasy, take a picture, have your FDA-cleared urinalysis done right away. The microphone on your smartphone now is a digital biomarkers that can pick up signs of early neurologic disease, cardiovascular disease, measure mental health. It can also pick up the sound of a cough. Is it croup, COVID, or tuberculosis? And recently published, the sound of your voice can predict your blood sugar. So it's going to be a screening tool for diabetes patients, or maybe tell you if your blood sugar is low, medium, or high without a CGM. So big picture, what these sort of diagnostic tools give us the ability to do is sort of measure our behaviors, particularly our bad behaviors, which drive most of our health outcomes, and start to nudge them in the right direction. So a few examples here, right? It's only been, 15 years since the Fitbit launched? I'm not sure how many people have a wearable on. I've got 5 different wearables on, 2 rings, a smartwatch, Apple Watch, etc., others. And what's interesting about wearables is that they can now measure almost every element of physiology and behavior. It's very rare yet for a clinician to use one clinically, but they can become integrated into our care. And the sensors are going from our wrist to inside our pills to track adherence. On the market as of last year are the Abilify for tracking mental health meds, for example. We're seeing next generation wearable devices that are coming to market that can do real-time blood pressure and probably soon real-time blood sugar. So imagine the Fitbit, Apple Watch, or Oura Ring of the near future that does blood sugar and blood pressure. That's going to be very informative, particularly we can follow that over thousands and millions of patients. Of course, these technologies need to be thinking about health equity, different skin colors and others going forward is important. But what's interesting is these are going to be basically replacing what you would require an intensive care unit. There's several companies making smart patches, right? A little $1 a day patch that's rechargeable can measure basically what an intensive care unit measures today. So it means you can discharge patients earlier or admit them to home or never admit them to the hospital in the first place. And then, of course, there's other sorts of wearables. There's ingestibles that can follow the health of your gut, patchables powered by body movement that can be wearable ultrasound technologies, ear technologies that can not just give you a hearing aid, but help you with your cognitive health and track your vital signs, sweatables that have a role in managing disease or if you're an athlete, insidables, technologies that are going to soon be chips underneath our skin. There's already several on the market. So the near future may be, particularly for chronic disease patients, that you can really have a lab sensor underneath their skin and track their disease 24/7. There's also the idea of electricity as medicine, electroceuticals. There's a Stanford biodesign company called TALHealth that's rolled out with, in this case, for essential tremor or Parkinson's. It's a wearable device. This is an older version, actually. And it measures kind of like a noise reduction headset, the tremor in a patient, and knocks it out kind of like a noise reduction headset. So this whole idea of electricity in medicine is coming, even for brain-computer interfaces to manage mental health disease. So watch the electricity as medicine space. And then even a simple wearable, like the Oura Ring, which is not simple anymore, can do an amazing job at tracking sleep, something so important for health. There's low-cost ways to improve your sleep. If you guys do nothing else with your health, start to track and optimize your sleep. That plays such a role. But these sort of consumer devices now are becoming medicalized. They can pick up early pregnancy, 5 days before a home pregnancy test. Or they can predict that you have COVID or measure your response to a COVID vaccine or booster. So new ways will leverage these into healthcare. And it doesn't need to be a fancy FDA-cleared device. Let's say you're an orthopedic surgeon, you send a patient home from a total knee replacement. You can measure with a Fitbit, are they walking more and doing better as you might expect? Or maybe they're walking less each day and they're about to have a fall or some other complication. So we can use these tools to improve proactive early intervention and track progress in remote ways. And speaking of mobility, think about using a vital sign. Mobility as a new vital sign, right? There's new ways to track our mobility and our musculoskeletal elements just with a simple AI-enabled app. And I think you should think about integrating that into our care platforms. And that can be highly personalized to prevent people from having falls or to optimize their health span and their mobility. And when you do need extra help, if you're a paraplegic, for example, now you can strap on these AI-enabled 3D printed exoskeletons, or we're going to see these all go into advanced bionics, and even wearable exoskeletons for those of us who are normally able. So a 90-year-old can climb Mount Kilimanjaro like a 25-year-old. So watch that mobility space. It's getting pretty interesting, this idea of smarter exoskeletons that are lightweight and powerful. My favorite wearable, since I'm a pilot, is the jet suit, which is even being used to rescue folks in the mountains who have medical issues. I got a chance to try flying one. I, most of the time, did not look like James Bond. Most of the time, I look like that. But anyway, that's a new form of wearable for health applications as well. And of course, thinking about integrative care, food is medicine. It's an old quote, let food buy the medicine, medicine be thy food, from Hippocrates. Now we can start to quantify our metabolomics and understand what that data means. We can look at our microbiome. There's now actually CGMs that are going to last for a year that are low cost. You can measure with AI your camera and understand what meals you're taking and their calories. You can measure your inputs and start to measure your outputs. So we're seeing a whole new set of consumer technologies coming to our homes to look at our health in new ways. So instead of having the fad diets, high fat, low carb, ketogenic, etc., we're going to enter an era of true personalized nutrition. You're leveraging microbiome, genome, metabolomics to really optimize our health and manage acute and chronic disease. So other things that are moving in the diagnostic space, of course, imaging. This is my brain with AI-enabled imaging. The next generation scanners are out there. You can get your full body done at QBio or Pernuva now for a couple $1,000s. Still expensive, not available to most folks. But now we're seeing smaller scanners, more portable ones. This mobile scanner, I had my brain MRI'd on a boat going down the Hudson River in 5 minutes, plugged into wall power. We're going to see in the next decade the ability to go to your corner pharmacy and get a full body scan done in 10 minutes, read by the AI radiologist. That might be part of our annual physical exam. Or wearable devices that can look for brain tumors and blood flow without needing an MRI or CT scan. So the diagnostic space is getting more interesting. And bottom line, these diagnostic tools, whether it's a scanner or something that you can fit in your pocket, are providing a new sort of digital doctor's bag or clinician's bag, or it could be a community health worker in rural India or rural California. So these are now tools that will democratize diagnostics, like the echo stethoscope, which will do your EKG and listen to heart sounds and do a better job than me in diagnosing a heart murmur. Or we're starting to throw away our stethoscopes. There's now AI-powered ultrasound devices, which means you can democratize diagnostics almost anywhere at the planet at low cost. And speaking of low-cost diagnostics, remember early in the pandemic, it took 2 days and PCR to get and a long line to get a PCR test? Well, I helped run an X Prize with Jeff Huber from Grail. We did a $6 million X Prize to develop next-generation, fast, frequent, and cheap and easy COVID tests. We had 700 teams from 77 countries and some amazing winning technologies, which are now not just able to diagnose COVID, but many other infectious and non-infectious diseases. We also want to diagnose cancer early. The Biden moonshot has catalyzed a lot of work in early cancer diagnostics, and now we're all available, still expensive, not perfect, platforms like Grail and Guardant that are going to give us eventually the ability to do very low-cost early cancer screening around the planet. I recently invested in, along with Andrew Ng, an AI fund with my fund, a company in India called Jivi.ai, and they've recently launched this amazing platform built for India, folks there who have almost no access to primary care, where you can talk to it in Hindi or any language. There's Dr. Jivi. It will give you guidance. It will push you to the right clinician if you need one, or a scan or a lab test. Really impressive multimodal AI is already built and just launched. If you go to Jivi.ai, you can download the app. They've also built a co-pilot for doctors, where now as a clinician, you can be doing a virtual visit, and basically it builds in what might be going on in the differential. So it's helping the clinician ask the right questions, look at the mind map, help do the right guidance and prescription, because we all need help in this AI-guided age. So check that one out. It's just launched in India. So bottom line, these technologies aren't necessarily artificial intelligence, I think more intelligence augmentation. They're enabling all of us to do a better job faster and better. To the point now where you can, of course, just upload your X-ray to MedPalm and it'll read an X-ray, and that can democratize diagnostic radiology around the planet. We still need radiologists. In fact, when cobots, radiologists with the AI work together, that gives you the best results. It's often a collaboration that's best. Of course, we're already seeing the examples of AI helping gastroenterologists find lesions they might have missed. Or now AI makes digital pathology. Just a picture of that H&E scan can tell you whether it's breast cancer or not, and if it's molecular markers without ever doing any staining. It's almost immediate results. And of course, new AI levels looking in new places, for example, the back of the retina can give you really interesting proactive information about what's coming next or how someone might do in the future. So really interesting integrative that can democratize care. We know we make a lot of medical errors anywhere on the planet. We're going to see this ability to pick up signs early, like signs of early sepsis. We see the first FDA-cleared apps for diagnosing sepsis that are just going to market. We can also use AI to reduce burnout amongst clinicians. We're all getting burnt out about having to type medical records. Now we're seeing the first early versions with things like Abridge and Nuance do a better job at integrating our care and helping clinicians not have to spend all their time doing notes. And of course, a big area, which I'm sure you've covered today, is AI meets drug discovery, helping us discover new drugs, run the clinical trials, and get them into patients when they need them at lower cost and better outcomes. I want to remind you that AI is, of course, blending with robotics. We're now in the era of humanoid robots. Another investment I made, Sanctuary AI, that's getting more and more autonomous. They might help replace the pharmacist or eventually home care. Hopefully these robots will be nice and cuddly. but they also can be social robots. It's pretty interesting to interact with them, but those will be part of our future care as well. So watch that space. In the next decade, we're going to have thousands and millions of humanoid robots playing a role across many fields, including health and biomedicine. So of course, this doesn't mean we're going to compete. We can't replace humans with technology, but we can augment them, and it can let humans do the human part of care. There's an old quote, AI is not going to replace your doctor, but doctors using AI will replace those who don't. We need to kind of be collaborative and let the human side of medicine flourish. Of course, a lot of this comes together in this newer field of digital health. We're starting to build and prescribe apps instead of just drugs and devices. It might be a drug for meditation, or an app for meditation, or for smoking cessation, or for mental health, or it might be prescribing a video game to kids with ADHD instead of Ritalin. What this is going to bring us in a big picture is to move from this era of quantified self, where most of our data is stuck on our smartphones, to quantified health, where we're going to be connecting the dots between our wearables and data and apps to optimize health and wellness, early diagnostics, and therapy that's much more data-driven in real time. And that will lead to what I like to call predictalytics. Imagine each of us has a bit of a FICO score, kind of like a financial score for our health. It's going to give us each our own personal check engine light. Already our Apple Watches can give us a little early warning if something's going wrong. So we'll each have a check engine light. In fact, Apple Watch just launched their Vitals platform. They'll start to integrate and let you know when you're off your own baseline, because that's what's important. The future of the physical exam will be continuous and personalized. And so in 10 years or sooner, we'll have almost a minority report. You're going to get a nudge and knowledge before disease ever becomes clinically evident. And that will be communicated to people in the way that they need to be communicated with going forward. And AI will help coach us in the right directions. So finally, there's so much happening in this space already today. How do you make sense of it? So that's a problem I've been trying to solve. So I recently built and launched a new website called digital.health. It's an easy website for anyone to remember. Go to digital.health, and we have over almost 4,000 digital health solutions there. So if you're looking for new forms of diagnostics, for example, for cardiovascular disease, you can find the AliveCore device again and learn about its evidence base and put it in your own personal formulary or put it in a prescription pad to prescribe a digital tool to your patients. You might be interested in tools for diabetes that relate to digital health and diabetes and find therapeutic interventions using diet, like Virta, that can reverse diabetes with coaching and AI and metabolic and manipulation. So there's lots of things there. If you have a digital health company or you're looking to explore one, you can add your companies and solutions on digital.health. We're just about to do our seed round. If anyone's looking to invest in a new company, find me. And of course, all these new digital tools are living in the Internet of Medical Things that will soon be 6G, 100 times faster than 5G. Our smart homes are becoming more integrated. But no doctor or patient wants more data. Data is great, but it's how you integrate it to make it useful. Of course, a lot of the data today is still siloed. There's problems with interoperability. People don't want to data share. The future needs to be one not of just big data, but turn that data into useful knowledge and information, and not taking 17 years to put that to the website or the bedside. So the challenge for all of us is to go to data, to knowledge, and make that knowledge useful and crowdsourced and updated in real time. So think about the near future of health and medicine, kind of like a Google Maps or Waze. Can you imagine still driving with paper maps? What if we could leverage the same mindsets going forward to sort of crowdsource the future of health and medicine? We're all donating a little bit of data in order to get a better picture of where we want to be on our health journeys in real time, not lagging and much more appropriate to us. I'm sure some of you have been to San Francisco and had your first Waymo ride, right, with no driver in the driver's seat. So it's a bit, oh my gosh, there's no driver there. It's a bit scary the first ride. By the third ride, you're kind of used to it. So maybe think, what if the future of self-care, self-health, was more like a self-driving car? It knew where you were, who you were. It came on demand. It had transparent pricing. It adjusted to the weather and the traffic. Imagine we use some of those lessons in the future of health and medicine. All right, let me close with the future of practice, right? All these tools are exciting, but how is it going to shift how we practice proactive care on the planet? Of course, it won't just be virtual medicine or physical medicine. It's going to be more and more blended. I call it, phygital health, right? We're going to move from our era of intermittent episodic data, pretty much always collected in the clinics or the ICUs or the emergency rooms, and that leads to our reactive mindset. We tend to wait for the patient to show up with a heart attack or stroke or late-stage cancer, to a future that's much more continuous, personalized, proactive, anytime, anywhere, at lower cost with better outcomes. That's the art of the possible that's starting to come together today. Of course, virtual visits won't just be talking to your doctor or nurse on a screen. You're going to first go through a triage with a chatbot that knows your genome and your digital data and where you were last summer and how you slept last night. And those will be our gateways to care. And we won't just be in the metaverse, we're in the mediverse, right? We're going to interact with each other in new, much more human and not just screen-based modalities. And of course, anyone can be turned into an avatar, as I demonstrated almost instantly today. So the way we interact and the way we represent ourselves is going to be interesting going forward. And that begs the question, how do we train folks, not just for good bedside manner, but good webside manner? And what's the future of medical education? Who we choose to be a doctor, nurse, pharmacist, and how do we educate them today to be ready for this next exponential age of health and medicine? With the future of therapy, we want therapy to be more personalized, sometimes make it easier to give a vaccine on a patch or leveraging new digital modalities. Think about digital manufacturing or 3D printing. We can hyper-personalize your braces, your hearing aid, medical implants. What if we could also hyper-personalize the problem of taking a pile of medications? Instead of taking 50 medications, we can really pick the right drugs and right combination. Instead of taking them all in 10 pills, what if we could 3D print a pill? So I've been building a new startup called IntelliMedicine, where we can sort of 3D print your own personalized poly pill. You can print it at the corner pharmacy or eventually at your home, and it will modify print based on your data. So I think that'll probably be the vision of integrated data and personalized medicines that can eventually be truly personalized and proactive. So it's an exciting time to reinvent medicine. It's being more digitally enabled, more AI enabled, and it can integrate many elements of other healthcare knowledges. Don't just think about any one technology, think about how they are accelerating and coming together. The future of medicine is not being built by one, by this convergence. And I challenge you all not to think about where we are in 2024, but be like the famous hockey player Wayne Gretzky and skate to where the puck is going to be in 2028 and 2034, and have that sort of exponential mindset that will take us from where we are now, intermittent, reactive, siloed healthcare, to a future that's personalized, proactive, health-focused, integrative, and can be democratized around the planet. So let's not take incremental steps, let's take exponential ones. In many ways, and many of you are building this future, it's just not equally distributed yet. My challenge to all of you is not to predict that future, but to collaboratively build it together. So if you're interested in investing in healthcare, come find me. I would invite you all to come join me at NextMed Health this December to collaborate on the future of healthcare. It's an exciting time to build that together. So if you want a copy of my slides, just hit that QR code and it'll magically appear on your website. So with that, let's create the future. Thanks very much.